Hey everyone, Kai here. So thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. The care and generosity you've shared is heartwarming and so clearly coming from a place of deep respect for the non-speakers and the work that we're all pursuing collectively. Thank you. And as we gear up for season 2, we wanted to address some of the lingering questions from season 1. So in a topic where each answer only seems to raise more questions, I've done my best to share what I've learned, and I'm so grateful for the new questions that beget deeper exploration. So let's dive in. A few of you have asked whether the non-speakers are open to stepping into more public roles as spiritual guides, healers, or even mediums. And could any of them see this being part of their life path or even career? And if so, how can you all access it? So that's a really exciting question, and it's something that I know there's a lot of people interested in trying to fund a center of some sort where non-speakers can more or less host a master's class or become accessible to others, to be teachers and guides. There's a lot of interest in this, and it's something that we're trying to support as much as we can. I'm going to be fully honest and transparent that we're finishing up the film and finishing up season 2. And I think once those things are through the finish line, then we're going to really pivot to making an impact and amplifying non-speakers and their lives, but also meeting their needs as far as hopefully trying to draw up more fair legislation to help spelling become accessible and affordable. But I can assure you, we have been reached by quite a few folks who are saying to us, like, I want to start this center. I want to start something. And our response to all of them is, yes, do it. So I think these things are being built. And to that end, we are looking for someone to lead our nonprofit arm. And if someone out there has run nonprofits or has run nonprofits, especially in the hospitality or educational space, we would love you to connect with us so we can connect you with the folks who are hoping to build something magnificent here. Another question we get a lot is, do non-speakers feel calling to work with the broader public and specifically the Telepathy Tapes community in this way? Or does that kind of exposure feel too overwhelming? And I think it depends on the person. It really does. From my experience, I found that many of the non-speakers that we work with and I know can be overwhelmed by all the need and pain in the world, especially when it comes to energy healing. I know of a few non-speakers who are great at energy healing, but being flooded with requests to heal can be a lot. And that said, some parents have told me that their children, often adult children, are really wanting to do it and even trying to travel around and start doing it. So my crowning advice around all of this is the best thing you can do is volunteer at a place with non-speakers or start learning to be a spelling to communicate partner or communication regulation partner and spend time with as many non-speakers as you can. And those friendships will lead to the natural give and take when it comes to both of your strengths. I can say that every person who I know who started working with a non-speaker regularly has found it to be one of the most meaningful relationships that they've developed. There's many ways to get trained as a spelling partner or CRP. There's Communication for All, which was started by Elizabeth Bonker, who's a non-speaker. There's SOMA's RPM method. There's Spelling to Communicate. Not all of those embrace talking about telepathy. There's a few communication regulation partners we know of who are starting their own spelling methodology. They're going to innovate a new spelling program that's going to embrace the spiritual gifts. So as soon as that's ready to go and accepting new students or new teachers to be trained, we will let you know. So for those listeners who are deeply moved by the healing potential they feel from non-speakers, we had a lot of thoughtful questions regarding how to go about respectfully and ethically engaging with non-speakers, both in person and in sending thoughts or energy from afar. And one question was, is it possible or ethical for us to reach out telepathically to a non-speaker we've never met? Could that be experienced as draining or invasive, even if the intent is loving? How could the non-speaker suggest we engage with their energy, if at all? And where does consent come into play when engaging with a non-speaker? And again, I think every non-speaker is an individual. It's going to vary quite a lot. Many of the non-speakers who we featured on the telepathy tapes describe being highly sensitive to energy. For some, even loving intentions can feel overwhelming or even intrusive if they haven't invited that connection. For others who are more outgoing, it's welcome. So I think it's vital to approach telepathy the same way we would approach any other form of relationship, with consent and humility and respect for boundaries. And if you feel drawn to connect with a non-speaker, or anyone really, right, try beginning with internal work rather than reaching outward. So send love, but don't push. Ask permission, even silently, and pay attention to what you feel in return. I think paying attention is really important. And often that quiet awareness is enough. But ultimately, I think non-speakers are teaching us something profound, and that's that connection isn't about doing, really, right? It's about being and recognizing that we're already linked by consciousness itself, and that the most ethical form of communication is one that's rooted in consent and respect. So I also say that just beaming out loving energy and peace and kindness will bring that stuff back to you. I can't overemphasize enough that the most essential need for non-speakers, teachers working with the population of non-speakers with apraxia, and their families is love and support and friendship. So get trained as a CRP. CRPs are with non-speakers all the time, both in communication and friendship and hanging out and doing all sorts of things. And I would always encourage you to start there. On that note, many listeners, sound healers, astrologers, therapists are so generously wondering how they can contribute and get involved. And what is the best way to support non-speakers? Is there a formal path for practitioners to connect with non-speakers in a helpful, respectful way? Do you need to be certified in special education to train as a spelling guide? And how can someone become more involved, especially if they're multilingual or based internationally? I just want to say how heartwarming it is to see this outpouring of support from the community. As this collaborative effort has grown and our team is growing and working to build out our website to provide thoughtful and educational resources and to establish platforms where these types of resources and sharing are taking place. We don't have all that out there yet, but our new website, the telepathytapes.com, has just launched, and there's an awesome resources page on the website that's going to connect you to different ways to train to be a communication regulation partner. What's exciting is there's some businesses that have just popped up that are going to embrace not just teaching coaches how to spell, but also embrace telepathy and the spiritual gifts. And those are going to be the ones we point you to, because these spelling organizations aren't going to be trying to censor talk of telepathy and spiritual gifts. But get involved no matter what organization it is. Okay, so we had one particularly powerful question from an instructor working with young autistic children. She's rethinking the value of traditional interventions, especially ABA-based ones, and is wondering, what kinds of therapeutic approaches do non-speakers find helpful or harmful? And is it necessary or helpful to practice problem-solving skills if non-speakers seem to have access to much more information that's out there? I can only say what many of the parents that we've worked with and interviewed and spent time with have said, which is ABA therapy, though can be wonderful for certain issues, it can be traumatizing for non-speakers. Because if you have apraxia, which most non-speakers do, you can't control what your body is doing. Your mind wants to do something, is thinking something, is fully aware of something, but your body is like a car without a driver. And telling someone you have to be operating your body this way, and that's a behavioral test, and often you're getting punished, and that's not helpful to most people with apraxia. I would really encourage people to check out Susie Miller's website. She has innovated so many integrative energy practices to really help therapists work with non-speakers and meet them. These might have to do with tuning forks or different colors. There's all sorts of wonderful things with music. There's a spelling school in Connecticut called Flowering Future, started by Natalie Meehan, and we've been there, and it's wonderful because there's crystals and it's soft lighting and flowers and plants and cozy blankets, and it feels really good versus sometimes what feels like really stark, cold institutional light in schools. And again, every non-speaking individual is different, but I think the things that calm you are going to calm non-speakers. But the most important thing I've also noticed is nature. If you're working with folks with apraxia, I have watched with my own eyes people who are having a really hard time dysregulating and maybe stimming, but then go into the forest and become almost catatonic. It's so calming. So we just have to rethink how we're meeting this population and really consider energy and nature and grounding as part of that work. Many parents and teachers I've talked to teach with their mind and not using verbal communication. And honestly, I've asked this to probably 50 non-speakers at this point. Do you prefer when someone's speaking to you telepathically or with your voice? And every single one has said they prefer telepathic. It's easier for them. It's much easier to understand and absorb. So if you are in a classroom, you could try that. Ask a question, especially if the non-speaker's letterboarding, and see what they do. They'll start letterboarding the answer back. And that happens time and time again. So I think it's something worth trying, mind-to-mind, non-local communication, telepathic communication, when working with that population or as a teacher. Give it a shot, because a lot of people find that to be extremely effective, more effective than speaking. I have watched a teacher in Illinois start to loop in telepathy to her classroom. And what she'll do is she'll give what she says time for mind-to-mind communication at the beginning of the day and throughout the day. And it's really amazing because all the students become really quiet. And it gets out a lot of what a lot of neurotypical kids might get out before school or at recess or running around and that type of thing. And I would say as a guide, teach and educate non-speakers based on their interest and their age. So if you have a non-speaker in your classroom who's 11, there are certain types of math that you're doing in 6th grade, right? There's certain types of science and biology that's appropriate and interesting. Some non-speakers, especially if they're spelling, will say, this is really below me. I'm so beyond this. I would like to start learning about plant cells or whatever. But I think getting the non-speaker spelling and communicating is the most important thing, so you know how to meet them. Start always at the most age-appropriate education and reach up, not down. And then as far as problem solving, you have to remember that it is tricky for non-speakers to control their bodies. Like Kyle, the non-speaker who is in England, who talks to his mom in dreams, one of the things that he would do is he'd eat ketchup incessantly during the day. But then he came to his mom at night and said, stop feeding me ketchup. My body likes it. My body loves it, but it's actually really not good for me. It's making me feel sick. And she's, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I just thought you loved ketchup. And there's another non-speaker in Connecticut, and her parents thought she was obsessed with Dora the Explorer because she just watched it nonstop on her iPads. When she started spelling to communicate, she's like, I was stimming. It made me feel good and I couldn't stop, but I hated it. I became like a teenager, and you guys kept putting it in front of me and I didn't want it. And her parents ended up tearing all the TVs off of the walls in their house and getting rid of all screens to help her from stopping stimming. So one thing that Lily in Atlanta has said, when you're talking to me, please address my body differently than me. So I might say, Lily, can you get your body to sit down here, please? Or Lily, is it possible for you to get your arm to move right now? That's separating the movement and the behavior from herself. So I really think you have to tailor the stuff based on the human being, and getting the non-speaker you're working with on letterboards so they can communicate is the first step. And that can take weeks. It can take months. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of time and patience. But once they're on the boards, they'll tell you everything you need to know about how to be educating them. Okay, so one question that we've gotten a lot is, how are we expanding this world in season 2? And are we keeping non-speakers engaged? To hear the rest of the AMA and to get Ask Me Anything episodes through the rest of the season from me and other special guests from season 2, subscribe to our Backstage Pass. You can find it on our website, thetelepathytapes.com.